Hello, everyone. We're so glad that you decided to join us for what's going to be a very insightful conversation, I think, about literary publications from someone who's seen both sides of the publishing world. A big thank you to the Writers Workout community, especially Teresa and Shelby, for making it all happen. So my name is Lindsey. I've been a blog writer for the Writers Workout since finishing my Writers Games internship about 2 years ago. And I'm joined by my past professor, Elizabeth Bradfield, who is the founder and editor-in-chief of Broadsided.
I am so happy to be here today, Lindsey, with you, and please call me Liz.
So a little bit more about Liz. She is the author of 5 poetry collections, most recently Once Removed Toward Antarctica and Theorem. She is co-editor of Cascadia Field Guide, Art Ecology, Poetry, and Broadsided Press, 15 Years of Poetic Artistic Collaboration. Her work has appeared in Atlantic Monthly, The New Yorker, The Sun, Orion, and her honors include the Audre Lorde Prize in Lesbian Poetry, a Ragdale Residency, a Massachusetts Cultural Council grant, and a Stegner Fellowship. Liz lives on Cape Cod, works as a naturalist and field assistant, runs Broadsided, and teaches at Brandeis University.
Great. Well, hi.
Being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for asking me. I'm really thrilled to be part of this conversation.
Okay. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about Broadsided, its origins, where the idea came from.
Sure. Yeah. Broadsided started in 2005, so in the baby years of the internet, which kind of drove some of the publication decisions that we had along the way. In essence, what we've done since 2005 is publish original collaborations of written and visual art as broadsides, posters, basically. So this is an old tradition, the broadside. It goes back to the early days of printing, very popular in early days of the United States, and has evolved since from being a method to mass disseminate public information, whether it's song lyrics or political treatises, to these days being a little bit of an artisanal, old school format in many cases, people using old letterpress machines, beautiful fine paper, engravings, woodcut, etc., to make art of poetry. For us, we kind of took that into the 21st century and we published digitally with letter-sized broadsides that are good to print on any printer with regular old letter-sized paper. But what happens for us, and stop me if I'm going on too long, I always tend to overcomplicate my explanations, as probably you remember, but we have open submissions of writing. So people across the country and internationally send us poems that they'd like us to consider. The editorial team selects work to publish, and then one of the artists, and we have 35 artists involved with the project, we send the poems out to them and say, who wants to respond? So they'll create an original digital visual response that we then bring together and design into this singular piece in which I really believe the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, because the art isn't illustration, the poem isn't caption. They can kind of do their own things side by side and create a different third thing.
Yeah, and I know you have like a Q&A session right online. So what is the relationship with the Q&A and the piece itself?
Well, the artist and the writer don't talk to each other throughout this process. We serve editorially as a go-between. So they are presented with the design broadside, and early along, we didn't start off doing the Q&A, but fairly early on, I got curious, what do they think of this thing that they've just given themselves over to? They've given up a lot of artistic control to be part of this collaboration, and it felt only fair to allow them space to talk about what that was like, whether they loved it or whether they had doubts, concerns, criticisms of what we did. So along with each broadside, we publish a series of questions and answers about the broadside itself, the creative process, the artists and the poets' responses to each other, some generative prompts for making work, recent favorite books that they've read or art that they've seen, just kind of a view into the minds and the aesthetic hearts of the people behind each piece, which they're so beautiful and generous and thrilling for me to read every time we get those answers back.
Mhm. And what would you like characterize Broadsided's voice as? Like, what kinds of pieces are you most drawn to for publishing?
I started this because I felt two things. One, I felt like where I was living at the time, I was living in Anchorage, Alaska at the time, and it really felt like the public spaces were very busy with um, commercial stuff, billboards, ads, signs, but poetry and art weren't so much a part of the daily visual presence of my life on the streets of and the sidewalks of Anchorage. And that seemed like a real shame to me. The art presence in Anchorage and the public art there has grown a lot since that time, which is really beautiful. But I was also thinking of smaller communities, rural communities, where you don't have a lot of access, and especially you didn't in 2005, in the, again, early days of the internet, to art and poetry that's being created in far-flung areas of the world. So I wanted to change that visual landscape, that daily landscape, for myself and for anyone out there with a modem, which is what we had at the time. So someone in Barrow, Alaska, or let's see, somewhere equally far flung in Florida on one of the Keys, to diagonalize the country. Someone in rural Maine, someone in rural South Dakota could have access to contemporary, exciting, dynamic art and poetry. The other thing that drove me to begin this was that I had just finished my own graduate degree, my Master of Fine Arts in poetry, and my family was super supportive. I started late in my 30s, but my mom, even though she was a big reader, didn't really get poetry. And, it was so important to me as a writer. And I thought that maybe alongside visual art, there might be a bridge for her to engage, to feel open to wondering. We're so visually smart, we see so much sophisticated visual art, design, information every day, and we're able to parse it and it doesn't freak us out. But somehow seeing something left justified with line breaks is like, whoa, too much, and that just seems crazy to me. So I think a lot about readers like my mom was then, and I think she's since then has come to read a lot more widely and fearlessly. But I think about readers like my mom was then, who would be easily off-put by something that felt like it was trying to over-intellectualize or be overly clever, to have the language be so forefront or so texture heavy that there's no story there or no understanding of what's behind the language. So really poems that are important and vital and beautiful, but not overly esoteric.
Mhm. So could you walk us through a bit more in detail with the submission and selection process?
Yeah.
So like how many submissions are you receiving? Who's the ones that are reading them? That kind of thing.
Yeah. We accept submissions via Submittable, and I'm really bad with numbers. This is why, well, I'm good at math, but I'm bad at keeping track of numbers. So I don't know how many submissions we average per month. But we have a pretty slim acceptance rate because we only publish, a conventional literary journal, if it's printed, they'll publish 50, 60 poems per issue. And whether those issues are quarterly or twice a year, whatever, that's a lot of work they can accept, even if they have a high volume of submissions. We only publish say 15 to 20 broadsides per year. So that's half of that. Um, so our acceptance rate is quite low. I think probably 5%, something like that.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just pulling that number out of the air. Um, but we have a team, myself, and three other amazing folks. Alexandra Teague, who's based in Moscow, Idaho, who's a poet and professor there. Miller Oberman, who's based in Queens, New York, poet and professor. And then Michelle Moncayo, who's in Brooklyn, New York, also a poet and a recent graduate of an MFA program. And we weed through the ones that feel like an easy no for whatever reason.
Mhm.
Um, and we only ask a couple people to look at those and just try and return them as quickly as possible to the folks who submit, because it really stinks when someone holds on to your manuscript for 3, 4, 5 months. I understand.
Mhm.
And then we have meetings twice a year as an editorial team and go through all the poems that we're interested in and curious about, and even the ones that we're unsure about. Gosh, those meetings, they're the best. All of
Mhm.
us are super busy and we're like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be doing other stuff with my time. And then we have these meetings and we're like, oh, it's so nice to be in a room with these smart people who care so much about words and talk poetry. And it's actually really, for me, incredibly revitalizing for my own poetic practice. But
Mhm.
we read them aloud, we talk about them, and we argue, and we cheer, and we laugh, and we decide.
Mhm. Making me miss doing the Laurel Moon literary magazine. I miss those conversations were the best.
They're so great, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
they are so inspiring. And yeah, just being in the presence of people who really care
Mhm.
is, it's hard to describe to someone who hasn't experienced that,
Yeah.
how radical that feels.
Mhm. Yeah. And for people who are also doing their own work, like you said, it's helpful to see and I get a better idea of what I want to do going forward. And
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Mhm. Um, so Broadside has been around for a very long time now. How have you seen it evolve over the years?
Yeah, there have been a few evolutions that I'm super happy with, and one is the Q&A that we talked about before.
Mhm.
Um, Fairly soon after that, I believe, and I'm going to look and see exactly when this was. Maybe 2008. No, it was 2011. One of our artists came forward, Yuko Adachi, and she was really affected personally by the earthquake and tsunami in Japan at the
Mhm.
time in 2011, the Fukushima disaster that followed as well. And she wanted to create a piece of art and wanted us to create a broadside that she could sell in her Etsy shop and raise funds for people trying to help the folks in Japan. And we were like, yeah, that's such a great idea. I love that. And it became this feature we call Broadsided Responds, where in this case, we posted Yuko's art and we invited, and actually art by a few other artists as well, engaging with the same moment, and asked writers to respond to one of those pieces of visual art with the idea that the whole issue, like mini folio of broadsides, would be for, from, of, and if any of Yuko's prints were sold, raise proceeds for the folks in Japan at the time. And we've done several of those, not quite once a year, but they've been really, really meaningful to me, because I really do feel like poetry and art are an important form of engaging with the moments of our lives and gathering stuff on a topic like that, whether it's the Ebola epidemic, guns in American culture, the Syrian refugee crisis, um, queer queer selves, um, multilingual societies. All of those have been things that we've felt have been very important for us to look at, wonder about, and kind of just create a focal point to respond to. So those have been really, really meaningful. So the Broadsided Responds. We started doing book reviews more recently, kind of as a way to give back because we publish, because we publish so few poets per year. And because of that, we very rarely republish the same writers. For a lot of us as writers, when we find a home in a literary journal, we send work back again and again, and it becomes kind of a go-to. And that relationship with the editors of a journal, feeling like the journal knows you and they've supported your work and they might again in the future, that's really wonderful. And we can't do that. So we tried to think about how can we support these writers in other ways? And so the reviews are always from writers who we've published in the past as a way of just, lifting them up, moving their work forward again, and circling back. Just this year, we switched from a monthly publication format. We were doing one broadside a month on the first of the month, one thing to think about and consider for each month of the year. And I really loved that slow pace. And we started that way because I wanted a pace that I could do even if I had a 50-hour-a-week job elsewhere. All of us are volunteer. None of us are paid for this. It's all done on the edges of our other work, both paid and unpaid. So I wanted to be mindful of that. But we needed a change up. So this year in November, we published our first folio. So we're going to publish 2 folios a year. We published 8 broadsides all together, the first of the month in November, and we'll do the same in April. And that kind of twice a year model, I'm really excited about because it allows conversations between broadsides, between artists, between poems. Like, what do these all mean together when you consider them? And it suits my energy level a little bit better. I'm a better, I was thinking about this on my walk this morning, on the Cuisinart, you have the pulse and then you have the sustained button. And I'm more of a pulser, right? And then go away. So this is the pulse method of publication, and it allows me to give a lot of energy.
And I know you also have the Broadsided anthology. So I was wondering if you could
Yes.
talk about the process of putting that together.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. That was really fun. It came out in 2020, which was kind of unfortunate timing for
Mhm.
books coming into the world given the pandemic,
Mhm.
but it was really a labor of love. We love that we publish digitally, and we love that anyone can print these for cheap, right? When I go to my library down the street, I don't have a color printer at home, but at my library, I can make color prints, color copies for 25 cents a sheet. That's so cheap, So it's affordable. You can find a quarter on the sidewalk and go print a beautiful broadside. And I love that. I mean, that's part of our ethos. That's really important to us. But we don't have a lot of control over print quality, and the art and the design of these broadsides are so beautiful. So we wanted to pull them into kind of a more formalized, beautiful coffee table book. Actually, I'm holding it up. Boop, you can see right here. Here's the anthology. So we worked with a publisher out here on Cape Cod, Provincetown Arts Press. Miller and Alexandra and Michelle and I chose 50 broadsides from our first 15 years and published them, edited down the interviews, published also a few broadsides that were brand new just for the anthology. And it's such a beautiful book. It's heavy, the paper is gorgeous, the printing is gorgeous. So it's been really nice to be able to honor the work that Broadsided has done and the work that these poets and artists have done in pages like this.
Mhm. Great. And so you worked with a small publisher for that. Did you ever think that you would want to do like a larger publisher? Like, what was the decision there, I guess?
To be honest, we went back and forth, not so much between small and large publisher, but between self-publishing and finding somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was I was leaning towards self-publishing, but what put me off of that is distribution.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I the marketing and distribution that a publisher can offer, and the infrastructure of design work, of copy editing, all the stuff that a publisher gives you, even editorial suggestions, was, looking back, if we had done this ourselves, it would not be half as beautiful. You know, the designer for the press, Irene Lipton, she did such a gorgeous job. I We could never have done that without her. So a larger publisher, yeah, that'd be great. But I think, you know, there's only so much energy in the day, and we were still publishing monthly. It just, to kind of do the grunt work of pitching and soliciting, just wasn't in the cards for me
Mm-hmm.
at that time.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, switching gears just a little bit, I wanted to hear more about your personal relationship to writing and publishing. So do you have a preference? Do they kind of like work off of each other, I guess? What's your relationship with that?
They're both very separate and not. You know, I started Broadsided the year I finished my MFA just because I wanted community. I wanted to, I loved my MFA community. I loved the peers. I loved the focus on writing and creative thought that it gave me and also brought me into the orbit of. And I thought of this not only as a way to give, but as a way to have literary community. So in that way, it was important to my creative life just to stay connected. There are times, and I think partly the reason we shifted to this twice a year model, there are times when I feel like some of the energy that I'd like to be giving to my own work, I'm giving to this editorial work. Not so much the reading of poems or even the design work, but the busy work, you know, the
Mhm.
correspondence, the contracts, the following up, the herding all of the cats. That is very, to be honest, very draining for
Mhm.
me. Right now, it's the price I'm happy to pay, but it's the one that I keep going like, oh my God, am I going to keep doing this? Because I'd rather be writing a poem than answering an email. Um, so in that way, there are costs to my creative work. But again, like the community I have with my co-editors and also with my art editor, Million Pham, and her, gosh, generosity and creative insights are just so heartening. I mean, when I get down about my own writing or the place of poetry in the world, which I do, um, because we all do, um, I when I come into these meetings and these engagements, and when I hear from people how moved they were by certain things that we've published, it really is just so affirming, and it makes me feel like I'm giving something to the world, and that feels really good.
Yeah. Same with my literary magazine. I did feel like I was giving back because I was very focused on my own writing, but then focusing on other people's work, it felt like more selfless, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And when we publish someone, like we've had poets like Jane Hirschfield have submitted poems to us. That's
yeah.
amazing, right? She's
Mhm.
phenomenal,
Mhm.
legendary. And then we've published poets where it's their first publication ever. And I don't know which one I love more, but being able to, I think I do know. I mean, it's an honor to have a poet like Jane Hirschfield send us work. That's an honor for us. I feel honored. Um, but it's equally an honor to be able to notice a new voice that's putting themselves out into the world. And, you know, what a gift to
Mhm.
give someone their first publication and to really, truly, truly believe in that work, because we don't publish anything that we don't adore, that we don't love, you know?
And I know there are probably a lot of people that are going to be watching this that are submitting for the first time and maybe worried about being rejected. So I'm wondering if you have any personal experience with rejection, how you've dealt with it, or like what your relationship to rejection has been.
Yeah, I think the first thing I want to say is that I really believe on the whole, most editors feel like I do. They are so excited to find amazing work by people they've never heard of. I think it can be easy to get a little jaded or cynical and think that it's all nepotism or who you know, or you have to be X, Y, or Z. And I don't think that's true. Sometimes, yeah, there's a little bit of that out there, but there's a lot of people reading the slush pile. And I will say, honestly, the fancy publications that I've had as a writer at the New Yorker, at the Atlantic Monthly, I didn't know anybody. I went through the submission portal, the generic guidelines online, and someone read the slush pile and published my work. So that is happening out there. So please hold and take heart. And rejection is going to be part of it, and you might be rejected because someone had a bad cup of coffee and didn't really have the time to look at what you're offering. You might be rejected because the subject is one that, for whatever reason, the editor got 50 submissions about Cocker Spaniels and yours was the 51st. And they're like, oh, Cocker Spaniels, I can't anymore. That's not your fault. That's timing. It's weird. It might be that you're trying the wrong place. Your poem might not be a good fit with the publication that you're trying for. That matters a lot. Do read the publications, read the submission guidelines, figure out who they're publishing, what kind of stuff they're publishing, and ask yourself, really, is this the best fit? And if you can have a little compartmentalization, for me, I have an inner secretary, and when she feels present, I'm like, secretary, all right, so we're doing that today. Great, we're gonna send stuff out, get out our files and get out our notebooks and be organized, and then the sensitive writer self is gonna take a step back and not even think about it, right? The secretary is gonna take over, be organized, send things out. My friend Jill McDonough, amazing writer and teacher in Boston, she told me once that she tries to get rejected 100 times a year. I love that.
I love that too.
Try and get rejected 100 times a year. That means you're putting yourself out there. And some poems that I really believe in, it's taken me 20 times to find a place that will take them. Sometimes it only takes once, but sometimes people will take a poem like, really, that? And sometimes one poem that I think is great is like, no, can't find a home. So I don't know. If anyone ever gives you a personalized note of encouragement, don't write that off. That's real. No one is going to send you a personal note of encouragement unless they actually want to see more work from you. They're not. And keep working.
I think that's a great place to stop. Thank you so much, Liz, for giving your time and telling us about your work. And thank you to everyone from the Writers Workout for watching.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And Lindsey, thank you so much for these questions and for agreeing to do this in an interview format. And I hope the drilling going on outside my house isn't too noisy. Enjoy your conference, everybody.